Okay. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231, adequate notice of this regular special meeting of the Planning Board of the Township of Franklin has been provided. And now we'll stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Councilman Chase. Marvin Cobles excused. Mr. LaCourte.
Here.
Ms. MacGyver.
Here.
Mr. Mettler.
Here.
Mr. Pettit had a death in the family, so he's asked to be excused. Mr. Stevens.
Here.
Mr. Thomas.
Here.
Partizan. Mr. Onyaka. Chairman Orsini. Good deal.
Okay. Start with the minutes. Is there any discussion?
I'll move the minutes of the regular meeting, July 17th.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. LaCourte.
Here, yes.
Chairwoman MacGyver.
Yes.
Mr. Mettler.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Mr. Posnack. Yes. That's it.
Okay, we have the resolutions, starting off with 507 Hamilton Street, which is PLN 13, 4 zeros and a 9.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. LaCourte.
Yes.
Chairman MacGyver.
Yes.
Mr. Mettler.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens is also eligible to vote on that.
Yes.
All right, so you can vote yes. I got a lot of no votes on here because of the... We're good. Now we have 495.
All right, 495 Weston Canal Road, LLC, which is PLN 13, 4 zeros and an 8.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. LaCourte.
Yes.
Chairwoman MacGyver.
Yes.
Mr. Mettler.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
All right, Melmed, PLN 12, 00010.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Mr. LaCourte.
Yes.
Chairwoman MacGyver.
Yes.
Mr. Mettler.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes.
All right, now we have the discussions. First one is the voucher for Martin Murphy, August through October. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Move payment of the voucher.
Second.
You could do that by affirmation. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just for the record, Councilman Chase has arrived at 7:33.
Anybody opposed? Okay, it is carried. All right. Now, under discussion, we have relief of conditions for Dean Addy. Mr. Lanford?
Good evening, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. Peter Lanford appearing on behalf of the applicant. This is a request that I am making as a result of discussions that I had with Mr. Dominic and Mr. Healy regarding a previous approval, and let me go through some history. Back in 07 and 08, I handled an application for a Peter Kovacs for a property at 499 Somerset Street. The board approved that application, and part of that application required us to provide off-site parking for the residential units, because under the Hamilton Street Business District Ordinance, you are required to provide parking for the residential units either on-site or in close proximity. I think the ordinance talks about walking distance. At that time, there were negotiations, and actually there was an agreement that was entered into between Mr. Kovacs and the owner of the property at Catty Corner, which was the parking lot that was also used by the supermarket that was on the other corner of Hamilton Street. That project was approved in '07. Since then, obviously, as you can see, other than the demolition of the original building, nothing has happened. Mr. Kovacs has long since gone. Literally. Mr. Addy acquired the property just recently. And if the board recalls, Mr. Addy was also before this board recently to obtain approvals for 507 Hamilton Street, which is the old Somerset Inn, which he was going to turn into a pharmacy with medical offices above it, which is still, actually, he's arranging financing, and hopefully that will get underway shortly. The reason we're here is that there was language in the original resolution saying we had to provide the parking, and it specified the lot Catty Corner. What we have, since we have no control over that lot, or Mr. Kovacs never acquired that lot, what Mr. Addy is proposing to do is take the parking, the required residential parking for 499, and put it at 507, which is just down the street, and that would be the additional parking. So we would need to amend the original resolution to allow us to put our off-site parking not across the street, but at 507 Hamilton. What that does is then we wind up losing 8 available parking spaces for the commercial, which we would have to pay for under the Hamilton Street Business District Ordinance as part of the as part of the 507 Hamilton Street application. But basically, we have now complied with the requirement under the ordinance to provide the parking. Is just in a different location, and so that's why I'm seeking the relief of condition or modification of the old resolution. Oh, yeah. The other thing that I've requested, thank you.
Don't forget about that.
Yeah, thank you. The original approval also talked about us providing one affordable housing apartment. Obviously, things have changed, and we've had that discussion with Mr. Healy and Mr. Dominic also. It is the town's position now that they would rather have the cash paid into their affordable housing fund in lieu of building the affordable housing units, since the township has met their affordable housing requirements. So, and we're willing to do that. So if we would get the relief of that condition and not provide the affordable housing unit, but pay the cash in lieu of. So that would be the second request.
Do I have any discussion on this? Want to move? Ted?
Well, I have to say that I'm a little uncomfortable with this essentially using the same parking spaces for 2 properties that, yeah, legally you can just pay in and say, okay, that covers our parking requirement, but when are we going to have actually more parking spaces? That's for the business as well at 507 as well as the residential at 499. I mean,
Well, 490
money doesn't... I have not seen the township actually buy any parking spaces with this money.
Well, and Mr. Chase, maybe that's something that the council needs to discuss. Pursuant to the ordinance, we're doing what we're required to do. Actually, there will be some monies coming in. I don't know how much money the council has received. Basically, 821 is starting up construction fairly shortly, so you'll be getting money on that. You'll be getting money on 499. You'll be getting money on 507. And there's also Mr. Garcia's application, which I believe is 520-something. So, and that's starting construction on Hamilton Street, which is a good sign. And it also results in money coming into the town for that purpose. So I guess at some point now, the governing body is going to have to figure out, once they start getting this money, how they acquire land to put a parking lot in or provide parking for the commercial. But basically, the Hamilton Street Business District Ordinance, when it was adopted, the discussion was that we need to provide parking for the residential units, which we are doing, and that ultimately, with the monies collected, the township would provide parking somewhere along Hamilton Street or various places along,
Somewhere.
yeah, various places.
Yeah, supposing nobody wants to sell us land for parking.
Well, I think the municipality has certain powers where if they feel they need the land, they can acquire it. And
You
there's
know how hesitant we are to use
Yeah.
eminent domain.
But again, that's your power and that's your prerogative. And again, there are also some sites, and I think it's maybe a little bit premature today to have that discussion, because I think until these units are start to be built, until the stores start to get occupied, then I think you really need to start to look at it. But, you know, I quite frankly have some ideas of where some parking could go and some sites which may be available. But, you know, until things gel and, you know, businesses are running, and right now there is no parking problem on Hamilton Street, but, you know, hopefully it'll be a good thing that you guys have to address.
If I can just speak real briefly to the affordable, yeah, I think this restriction was put on at, I think, a different time in the township and a different time in our situation with COA. I can't say that we are, I don't know, nobody knows what our obligation is because of the situation with COA, but overall, we're in a good state. And we've also learned that over time, imposing restrictions like this where very small developments, you know, 6 units, imposing affordable, providing an affordable unit just is unsustainable, and frankly it's really impeding the development. Here we're trying to encourage investment in Hamilton Street, so I'm certainly in favor and would recommend waiver of that condition and collect the 1% fee per ordinance. The one question I have, and I just want to make sure the board is clear as far as the proposal for the parking in terms of what you're actually providing on 507 is Kovacs, is that right?
No, 499 is
499 is
Kovacs.
Kovacs. What's actually being provided over there, and then what's being provided over 507? I'm not sure the board is...
On 499, and I didn't bring my entire file, and my recollection is that there were 9 parking spaces. They were all, 7 parking spaces, 1 of handicapped, and then 6 residential parking spaces on 499. On 507, I think we had 19 parking spaces, which would have been all commercial spaces. We would now take the ones we need for 499, which I think is 8, properly sign them as reserved, and then the remaining 10 or 11 spaces would be commercial parking spaces. So 507 will have commercial parking spaces. Also, again, Dr. Chase, as a follow-up, my client is also acquiring some additional land on Hamilton Street that he has not decided how to develop it yet, so if the township wants to talk to him about buying some land, you know, he may be interested in talking to you guys. So, the same gentleman, Mr. Addy, is trying to, you know, has also 519 Hamilton Street. So, again, I don't know if it's the right time for the governing body to be talking about that, but there are opportunities to acquire land for parking.
Does the board have any questions about the parking scenario?
I think,
I do. That's about 2 blocks from my house, and I would just sort of push back that there isn't a parking problem, because there is, and there's really not much development in that area. And so for your client's perspective, putting in retail and not having adequate parking should be a major concern. It would be an impediment to business. If people can't park, they can't shop. And I can just tell you, I go in and out of there every time I leave my house, and there's not much there, and parking is full. And a lot of folks are parking in the 507 property because it's unmaintained, just there, so they might not be on the street, but it's being utilized. And in addition, across the street, there is a fairly large for sale, I believe, property that has lots of parking that helps to relieve some of that. Even so, when you pass through that area at the top of the crest of Hamilton, those spots are full. And quite frankly, I know because as I turn left, I can't see. And there's another property that's vacant right across there, across from the Sigmart. Maybe that's the one that you referred to that your client purchased, that is empty. If that were to be commercialized, which we hope, parking is going to be an issue. So I just ask my fellow board members to consider this, because I think it's really important that when we plan for the folks that are coming in and out, they have places to go it's safe for them to shop, and it's good for business to have that parking.
Yeah, no, I concur. And again, the way the ordinance was established, it sort of put, to some degree, the burden on the governing body if they felt that there was a need with the funds that the developers were contributing to acquire land for parking. Again,
So I guess I do have a question. The question is, the 8 spots would basically be incumbent upon the township to provide, that you're relinquishing actually being responsible for creating those.
But it's really, it's not that they're providing those spaces. They have an opportunity to pay into a fund because the governing body and the planning board determined that, for whatever reason at that point, that they wanted to encourage the ability to develop on that street, and part of that encouragement is to say that they can pay into a fund that at some point the township may do something. It's not that a day or 2 days or 6 days later that those 8 spots are going to be developed. They're saying that they have the ability via the zoning to pay into a fund and get an approval based on that. So
What's the variance, though, is to allow you to pay into that fund?
There's
no,
no
there's no variance.
No variance.
We're allowed to do it.
What happened was is they got an approval, and when someone gets an approval, there's a resolution written, and they're asking for a relief of conditions. One of it is the affordable housing. The other is that the resolution specifically mentioned that they must have parking across the street. If it just said in the resolution they must provide as per the ordinance, they wouldn't be here. We, staff, could have approved it. The resolution was written, the applicant was a little different in this, so everything was very specific, so we wanted to make sure it was there. Typically, we would say as per the ordinance, and they'd never be here. Because of the issue that we had with this individual, it was very specific, so they're coming back just to say that we're not going to provide it across the street, we're going to provide it someplace else that's in accordance with the ordinance. They're in full accordance with the ordinance. They comply with the ordinance, but they need a relief of condition because the specific condition of approval was it needed to be across the street. It's very technical, but because it's written that way, we staff, and the board has directed us, if it's very particular, you're the only one that can waive that condition. They're still meeting the ordinance. They don't need any variance. They don't need any relief. They're just meeting the ordinance in a different place than what the condition in the resolution specifically said they needed to meet.
And can I just ask what the change, why you need to change that?
Yeah, because when, in 2007, when we were before the board, Mr. Kovacs had negotiated a contract to buy that lot that's for sale across the street, and that's where he was going to put his parking. Mr. Kovacs is gone, this property, the 499 was foreclosed upon, so obviously, Mr. Addy, who now purchased the property, still has an obligation to provide the parking, but he has no contract across the street, but he does own 507, so we want to put the parking on 507 because that's where we can provide it.
The other reason I'm concerned is that the approval for 507 is for medical offices. And I think they tend to require, and we'll discuss this on another application later, more parking simply in the sense that people are likely to stay longer, particularly if doctors get behind schedule as doctors do. And therefore, the need for parking may be more than if it was for retail use of the same scale.
You may very well be right. However, quite frankly, pursuant to the way your Hamilton Street ordinance is written, on 507, I could have put 100% building with 100% offices and 0 parking, because your ordinance doesn't require either commercial or professional uses to have on-site parking. So, you know, again, if somebody has a problem with the ordinance, maybe the ordinance needs to be looked at, but your ordinance, the way it's written now, any commercial development along Hamilton Street requires 0 parking as long as we pay the equivalent of the parking spaces. So I could have taken 507 and not put any parking in and made that whole building medical offices, and and provided no parking, and I would have been in full compliance. Again, maybe you need to revisit the ordinance, or maybe you need to start planning on parking spaces, but quite frankly, what we're doing is in compliance with the ordinance, whether it's retail or medical or other professional offices. There's no requirement in the Hamilton Street Business District for the developer to actually provide the parking spaces. They only are required to pay for the parking spaces if they so desire.
Would you locate an office on Hamilton Street if it had no parking?
He'd take his bike.
It depends on who my target clients are. It depends what the office is. I can't say I would or wouldn't. If I had a walk-in trade and that's who I was catering to and I was going to service the local community. And again, at least at this point, and, there is street parking available along Hamilton Street, so it's a tough situation. I mean, you're trying to redevelop it or develop it, and you made a decision that that's the way you want to develop it. And I was in New Brunswick today. I have 2 applications I'm working on. One is on French Street and one is on Easton Avenue. And we had hours of discussion about the same thing because, again, their ordinance, if it's in a transit village district, there's no parking requirements. And then, as you well know, in New Brunswick, parking is problematic, and there's no simple answer or simple solution. I mean, I think, quite frankly, Franklin is a little bit of ahead of the curve in that there is still undeveloped land that's available on Hamilton Street as opposed to New Brunswick, where there's not much left other than parking decks to do.
Hard to say whether that's ahead of the curve or behind the curve.
Well, I mean, as far as the issue of parking, I think you are, because you have opportunities.
Yeah.
The thing about this, as I see it, the town was a willing partner years ago, or willing to be a partner years ago in order to encourage good development along Hamilton Street. And maybe it's something as a planning board and a council, everybody thought, well, that's in the distant future. It appears that the future is here. The development's here, and it appears it's time to have that discussion, either whether it's initiated by the council or it's initiated here. But there's apparently going to be a need to solve this parking problem. When the applicant comes now and totally meets all the conditions of the ordinance, I mean, it's nice to sit and reflect back on things, but, again, the town was a willing partner in being willing to take the money in lieu of parking, to put it in a fund and provide it at some future date. Again, it appears that future date is coming, and we need to look in that direction, I think.
If I could.
Well, I can bring this to the council's attention, of course, and
Well, let me
what
just
thinking is
tell you, we're already starting to look at it. I've been working with the Hamilton Street Business Corporation for the last few months, looking at some ideas that they have, and we'll be presenting it to the planning board at some point within the next few months. So the issue is being looked at. As far as parking, we haven't gotten into that yet. I would think at the end of the day, I think Hamilton Street is a different commercial zone than Easton Avenue, Route 27, where typically the commercial uses, there is no on-street parking. And the properties are much larger, so they could reasonably accommodate every last parking space that they need. Hamilton Street, we're trying to do something a little bit different, trying to create, if we have a main street, that's Hamilton Street, so I think you typically would expect the site to provide some of its requirement, and then some of it's going to be handled through on-street parking or public spaces. With that said, if the ordinance presently allows the development to go forward with none of its parking being provided on site, well, that's probably something we want to look at and reconsider and tweak a bit. Question for you. So you're taking the 8 spaces from 499, putting them on 507, and then essentially the payment in lieu is in reference to 507.
That is correct.
Right? Why don't you just,
And there is also a payment obligation for 499 for the commercial spaces there. So there's also there's a payment there for not having the commercial spaces on 499.
okay.
So we have to pay for 499's commercial, and then the deficiency, we do have commercial parking spaces on 507, but we have a deficiency, and that deficiency is what we have to pay for.
Okay. All right, thank you.
We don't have to go with Mr. Calvo because it's not here. If there's no further discussion,
I would move to approve the relief of the condition.
do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Councilman Chase,
Yes, somewhat reluctantly.
Mr. LaCourte,
Yes.
Chairwoman McIver,
Yes.
Mr. Mettler.
Yes, but I would also agree, and I'm glad that the whole question is going to come back before us, because I think we do need to look at it. But
Mr.
yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Partenzak.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Surprise, you're here for the next one.
The next three.
Okay. Ardmeyer Construction?
This is also, Peter Lanford appearing on behalf of the applicant. This is also a relief of condition. This is a lot on Matawang Drive, which was part of, I believe it was the Town and Country subdivision many years ago that
You got it?
was a large subdivision development. There were 3 lots that the developer at that time sold to people by the name of Stett,
Mrs. Stat, yes.
who lived behind this property. The Stetts have since passed away. The property has been sold to Ardmere Construction. They have built on one of the 3 lots a single-family residential dwelling. They are they're starting their second single-family residential on the second lot. And on the third lot, the planning board many years ago, and this application I did not handle, so I don't know all of the rationale behind it, but imposed a conservation easement on about half of the lot. Actually, more than half of the lot. The problem is, there's one minor problem that arose. When the utilities came in, all the utility boxes were put at the, basically the corner of the property, and the only way you can get onto the property is now blocked by the utility boxes. So there is no way to access the property to build a dwelling. So what we are asking for relief of is to have the elimination of 213 square feet of the conservation easement, so we can put a driveway there so we can get to the house on the property. The conservation easement is 1.337 acres. The buildable portion of the lot is .95 acres. And so what we would be doing is, as you can see on the drawing that we gave you, is basically putting the driveway to the left of the utilities that were already in place. Otherwise, it would require us to get the utilities relocated, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And so this just allows us to put the driveway in. This conservation easement, I talked to the engineer of the applicant, there are no environmental issues. It was not because these are wetlands or wetland buffers. I do have some photographs if the board wants to see them. The area is basically some scrub pines, and there are no trees that need to be taken out of any significance whatsoever. So it's just to allow us to put the driveway in.
And this is another one of these very technical things where typically, where they had an easement like this, staff would be able to work something out. The specific approval actually said only the planning board can allow anything to happen within, and we don't know why the easement was, none of us were around. Only the planning board could relieve that condition. So while typically staff would have done this, we wouldn't even had you do this because that specific condition was in that says only the planning board can do it. It needed to come back before you, so.
Basically, the last page of their submittal kind of tells the story. You can see their frontage of 248 feet, about 25 feet of the frontage that's not in the conservation easement is exactly where somebody put a utility box and a transformer. So they're looking to just kind of go around
Because
it.
it wasn't in the
That's,
conservation
it
easement.
probably was no coincidence, you're right.
Is there any discussion? There's no discussion.
Madam Chairman, I would move approval of the request.
I'll second.
Councilman Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Court,
No
Yes.
bother.
Chairwoman McIver,
Yes.
Mr. Mettler,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Parsons.
Yes.
All right. Now we're ready for the hearings. Devon Realty is first.
That's also me. Good evening, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. This is an application on behalf of Devon Realty. Property is located at 60 Clyde Road. By way of history, this property at the present time has located on it a warehouse of approximately 100,000 square feet. The site is a 9-acre site. It fronts on Clyde Road and has about a 50-foot stub of Jiffy Road at the other end of the property. This was probably one of the original warehouses that were built in Franklin Township. It's probably 40-some years old. If anybody has gone by there, it is in some sort of need of repair and upgrades. The current owner of the property came to me about putting the parking lot in for the parking of trailers. In order to be competitive in this day and age, the facility needs to have trailer parking. All of the newer warehouse facilities that this board has approved, either on Schoolhouse or on Heller or other parts of your industrial zone, have trailer parking besides parking at the docks. Although this building is 100,000 square feet, it only has 15 doors on it. My client has a tenant in there who's a month-to-month tenant. He is looking to try to establish a long-term tenancy with a rather larger trucking company, but everybody he's talked to needs more trailer parking. So that's the reason why we are making the application. The application itself is fully conforming. There are 2 existing variances with respect to the subject property, which my engineer will testify to. Those existing variances are not going to change. We are not creating any new variances whatsoever. So we are here solely for the site plan approval for the parking, the new parking lot. Part of it is for vehicle parking, and part of it is for truck parking and trailer parking. Having said that, I will call Mr. Skapanitz as my first witness.
Want to raise your right hand, sir? Do you promise to swear to tell the truth and or affirm to tell the truth to the best of your ability?
He's been before us many times.
You're still a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey?
I am. I'm going to switch my phone. I am, yes.
Mr. Skapanitz, you've been retained by the applicant to prepare the site plan that is the subject of this application this evening.
That's correct.
And in order to make your presentation, you have certain exhibits that you're going to rely on.
I do.
Perhaps we can mark them. How many exhibits do you have?
I have the survey, which I'm not sure if we need to mark. It was part of the package. It's unchanged, which illustrates the existing conditions, and I have 2 other exhibits.
I'll mark the survey as A1. And your other 2 exhibits are?
I have a colorized version of the aerial photo. That's page 2 of our site plan set. Just colorized for presentation this evening.
Mr. Murphy, I will mark that as A2.
Sure.
And A3 is the colorized version of the site plan?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Skapanitz, can you briefly describe the property and also the surrounding land uses around the property?
Sure, I'll refer to the aerial map, which was marked as A2. The aerial map illustrates the subject property located just to the southwest of Amwell Road, near Clyde Road, at Clyde. It's 60 Clyde Road. It's a facility, as mentioned before, of 100,000 square feet. Building is situated closer towards Clyde Road, extends back along from Clyde through what is, everyone expects to be as Jiffy Road, but technically stretch from Clyde Road across the frontage of this property is actually an easement. It's not a public right-of-way in that location. So there's a 50-foot wide easement along there, which is entirely within our client's property, part of the 9 acres that they maintain and utilize. Obviously, he also shares access with the adjacent property to the north. The building itself contains, right now, 74 parking spaces. The majority of that field is located to the to the west of the building, and you can see that in the plan or in the aerial. There's another smaller field of parking spaces near the main door closer to Clyde Road. The bays that were described earlier, the 15 bays, it's really actually 12 active bays. There's 3 bays that are sort of blocked off closer to the west end of the building. They're located along the northern face of the building towards that Jiffy Road easement. So that is the existing condition. We're in your M2 zone where this use is permitted.
Are there any environmental conditions on the subject property?
There are. As part of our due diligence process, we took a look and evaluated the property and the area in which we were looking to provide the trailer parking spaces. We had a wetlands consultant go out and look and identified wetlands that were located on that western portion of the property, the wooded area. We subsequently performed and prepared an application submitted to the NJDEP. They came back to us with a letter of interpretation that indeed noted that they agreed there are wetlands there, but they're of an isolated nature. So being of an isolated nature, there are wetlands that we can apply for a permit to have them filled up to an acre of the isolated wetlands that are on the property. There's actually less than an acre. We're actually looking under the proposal, and I'll get to that in a moment, to fill less than a half an acre of wetland area. We have not yet applied to the DEP for that permit, but if we were to receive a favorable opinion from the board on this application, we would proceed and do so and apply for the permit to the DEP for the filling of those wetlands.
Okay. And at the present time, access to the subject property can be either from Clyde Road, correct?
That's correct.
Onto the site, or actually from the terminus of Jiffy Road also onto the site?
That's correct, heading from the west, yes.
Okay. Can you now indicate to the board what we intend or are proposing to do to the subject property?
Sure. Actually, before I do that, maybe I'll note just the 2 existing nonconformities that exist within this plan. There's the requirement for the building setback to Clyde Road is 50 feet per your ordinance in this zone, and the building is set right now in the south or west corner, I think this will be the northeast corner of the building, is 48.8 feet. So it's 1.2 feet off in that corner. And then the parking spaces, primarily along the western side of the building, do not meet your ordinance requirement for width. They measure at 8.7 feet in width. So they're just about 4 inches shy of meeting the requirement along that edge. So those are the only 2 existing non-conformities.
Okay. Now, with respect to that parking lot that you just described, are we proposing any changes to that parking lot?
We are proposing
Okay.
some changes to that parking lot, yes,
Okay.
in order to incorporate the proposal, which I'm putting up Exhibit A3. This is a site plan rendering, which is essentially our site plan and landscaping plans combined and colorized for presentation this evening. So this would essentially be our overall plan of the site plan set, which has been colorized and shows the existing building. Clyde Road is off to my left-hand side or to the east. The easement, which leads to Jiffy Road, runs along the bottom of the page. So that area off to the right-hand side of this exhibit or to the west is where that wooded area is currently located, and we're proposing to make the modifications in that area. It would include the construction of 55 trailer parking spaces. They would be 12-foot wide by 55 feet in length. 55 feet will accommodate the largest trailer you have out there at 53 feet. We have an aisle in between, which is 110 feet wide. And 110 feet basically gives us the ability for a truck to pull in, and he can make a full turn with ease within that area to be able to maneuver, park its trailer, and then the truck can move out and vice versa. It can make full movements within that area. But to note earlier, we are modifying, this is in the area of those parking spaces to the west side of the building, so you can see that a portion of those are being removed. But in recognizing that we were removing some of those parking spaces and actually bringing the total number of parking spaces down to a point where we would not be, we would be reducing significantly the amount that's there now. We're showing a change to the front end of the building near the main entrance to introduce some more parking, which we felt was needed. There's only a handful of parking spaces there. With anticipating a new user, more activity towards the main door, we're introducing some more parking in the front so that the total number of parking spaces goes from 74 existing to 72 under the proposed condition. So in total, we have the 72 parking spaces for regular cars, and we have the 55 trailer parking spaces in the plan.
Okay, in addition to adding the parking field, are we doing anything for lighting at the site?
Yes, the lighting certainly needs to be upgraded. I was there today. I went just as the sun went down, and that back area is poorly lit, needs to be upgraded. We are looking to introduce new light fixtures in the trailer parking area. There would be taller fixtures. They're at 25 feet in height, but it's a 400-watt fixture, not much brighter than anything you've approved probably before in a commercial parking lot for retail. Just taller in nature to be higher and above the trailers. We're proposing those to either end of the trailer parking field. And then we're introducing a couple more light fixtures in the front parking area near the main entrance. So it'll be a total of 8 new fixtures in the plan.
Okay. As a result of creating all of this new impervious, we are required to provide stormwater management?
Yes, we are.
Okay, and can you indicate to the board how you're dealing with that issue?
Yeah, we're going to deal with that by incorporating a basin in the southwest corner of the site. This is in the area primarily where the wetlands are located. I'll tell the board that in our initial submission, we made a submission. We had done some soil borings at the request of your engineer. We went back out with some additional soil borings in that back area of the wetlands, basically proving that we certainly have a high water table, which I know is prevalent throughout the township, as well as the condition of where we have limited area to recharge stormwater. But in that area, we've provided a basin, which is a combination of a sand filter and a stormwater detention basin, which will take on the stormwater associated with the new lot, as well as portions of the parking area in front of the building, and handle the stormwater to reduce the discharge of stormwater off the site versus existing conditions. We did receive tonight comments from your engineer, which I will agree to them, one of which is to work with him on the portions of the design. And then we also have some comments that we received from DRCC. We had to submit to the Delaware Raritan Canal Commission for this application, and their primary comments related to stormwater, so we do have some additional tweaks we need to make, but we feel we can make those with no problem and satisfy both departments.
Okay, and in making those changes, would that in any way substantially change what the board is looking at this evening?
No, it would not.
Okay.
And Pete, just real quick, there's one comment in Carl's report regarding that he believes a portion of Jiffy Road is in the right-of-way. Whether it's a right-of-way or easement, we can work that out later. That's a question of fact. I would say the board would want to make a finding of fact that if they decide to approve it and it is a right-of-way, that we grant you the variance to be within that 50-foot. If it's not, then it's not. But I don't want to have you to have to come back based on this comment if we don't grant you the variance.
I don't think it's a variance, Mr. Dominic, and perhaps Mr. Scap.
What I'm saying, I'm saying.
If you want to give us the variance, fine.
What I'm saying is that he has it in the report.
Yeah.
That he believes it's a right-of-way. If it is, then technically, because the parking is within the 50-foot. If it's not, it's not. It's a question of fact. You and Carl can work it out. What I don't want to have happen is that we find out that it actually, a portion of it is, for whatever reason that he has, and then you got to come back to the board because your approval is invalid. I don't think it's a big issue for the board because it's a technical issue. I don't really want to waste the board's time having a discussion about whether it is or isn't, because it is or it isn't.
Okay, yeah,
And Vince, just for the board, so they understand what his comment is about and where it may be appropriate or what he's talking to. I'm assuming it's to the west end of Jiffy Road. So where Jiffy Road comes in, it really doesn't, it stops at the property line. So where the public right-of-way stops is at our property, and then across and through our property is where the 50-foot easement extends. So I'm assuming Carl's looking at it and saying, well, with Jiffy Road butting up against this corner, is there indeed a 50-foot
Right, and I
setback from
think
that
it's just
corner?
better to make a finding of fact
Okay.
that if it is, and then we could deal with it later. I don't want to have you come back in 3 months because we didn't grant you a variance that we decide that you need it later on, so.
that's fine, Mr. Dominic, and perhaps, eventually, because we're going to have to submit revised plans, maybe you, as the zoning officer, can talk to Mr. Houck, and then we can sit down and determine that if it is not a variance, I would rather not have it on there as saying it's a variance when it's not. But if we determine it's not,
I think
Yeah.
the idea is, we can work it out.
okay.
And from that corner, the edge of the parking to that corner of the right-of-way is about 20.5 feet.
Okay.
So we're adding the lighting, landscaping. We are obviously removing trees in that wooded area. We've done our calculation for tree replacement, included that in our plans. I know Mr. Healy noted in his comments the fact we are replacing, we're putting in additional trees, primarily along the frontage of the easement, facing towards the easement. And then we're also supplementing some additional trees interior to the parking areas. We have about 57 trees shown in our plan, 52 trees shown in our plan, which leaves a deficiency requiring us, we would have to pay towards the tree fund, which is noted in Mr. Healy's letter.
Okay, but there will be some new plantings as part of our proposal?
There are, yes.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to review the staff reports that were generated in conjunction with this application?
I have, yes.
Okay. Before I even go into those, have you designed other warehouse facilities over the last couple of years?
Yes.
Okay, and the proposal here for the parking of trailers, is that fairly consistent and a requirement today for any new warehouse development?
Yeah, new or old. In fact, I'm actually working on another application in North Brunswick off of Jersey Avenue, which is very similar to this. It's about an 80,000 square foot building, has many more bays, but it's a similar situation where there's limited truck parking, and we're trying to develop a plan within an existing site to try and, in order to maintain the current user there, there's a demand to have the trailer parking there instead of off-site. Obviously, there's a cost associated with that, so having the trailers right there to be able to move them in and out, shipping or receiving, is a benefit. So, yeah, it's definitely consistent with new or old.
Okay. Now, with respect to the reports, first of all, we did get Mr. Houck's report, and we just got it this evening, but you did have an opportunity to review it.
I did.
And subject to having some discussions on stormwater management, we can comply with everything contained therein.
Yeah, the only ones I had noted were the one that was just brought up with respect to that setback
Okay.
question. And the only other was a question that he had raised regards to fencing, having a 4-foot fence around this entire basin. Currently, I mean, under design for a residential basin, I understand having that near residential dwellings, homes, et cetera. But given the location of this property, given the fact that the basin itself there will be existing wooded areas surrounding it. It'll remain. I'm looking to see if the board feels we really need to provide a fence entirely around that basin. We are going to have a rail and measures around the parking lot, trailer parking lot side of the fence to prevent people from walking towards that basin. But I don't see the need in having a fence entirely surrounding this basin on all sides.
So we would ask the board to grant us relief from the remainder of the fencing around that basin.
Yes.
Well, I would say let the board have a discussion on that now, so that we can, I don't want to forget that at the end to see whether the board feels, I mean, that's a planning concern, so.
Madam Chairman, I, for one, would like to see the fence all the way around. Yeah, it's true there aren't any houses right here, but that doesn't mean the kids can't wander over there. It's not like you're miles away from residential developments. And it's not unprecedented. I'm thinking, for instance, of the shopping center off of Elizabeth Avenue, where the Chase Bank is. And there's a detention basin in there, which is completely surrounded by fencing, even though there are no houses very near that at all on either side of the street. So it seems that the town has a precedent for requiring this, so I'd need a stronger reason personally to abandon it.
Okay, knowing that site, I'll just bring up this one point and leave it at that. Knowing that site, it's a commercial area and you have the public moving in and out of there.
Yeah.
This is more of a private location where the public's not moving in or out. I mean, in the spaces that are here, off on the side, while you could have cars moving in or out, chances are they're probably going to be almost entirely employee-type spots. People that are coming here as a destination-oriented, destination. You wouldn't have the public going in and out daily like you do the shopping center.
Yeah.
Also, this is not a retention pond. This is a detention pond. Those basins that are there, I know that facility are more of a retention type, where you're going to have water sitting in them and then perking through the ground at a slower rate, or through the sand filters that are there at a slower rate, whereas we don't have that situation here as well. While we will have it filled in larger storms, primarily this is going to be a dry basin through the majority of the year. So I'll leave it at that, and
Okay.
I'll leave it to the board.
Go ahead.
Does the board have a feeling one way or the other, just so that, because I don't want to get to the end and not have a decision on this, that's all.
How many of the old trees are you taking out? And is there a deer population in there?
I'm not aware of whether.
I don't think there's too many deer there.
Yeah.
No deer?
No.
I don't think so.
But as far as the estimation is
That's sort of
concerned, we were requiring a total replacement
You know what they use it for?
requirement of 847 trees.
You're going to take out 847 trees?
We did it on an estimate, so we're saying there's probably, I think the estimate came up to actually roughly 990 trees. But that's just, again, it's based on a cross-section of an area that we took, like a 100 by 100 area, and made the estimate. So, yeah, it's going to be roughly 900 out of that site.
So is there a feeling from the board regarding the fence around the basin?
Anybody have any other comments?
I mean, is your objection to the 4 feet, or just anything around it, just so folks know if they're meandering?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have a problem around portions of it, again, because of the back side of it, particularly to the south, and as we head around to the west, it's going to remain with natural vegetation around it. You're going to have, we have a drop-off of 1 to 3 slopes on those sides. It's not like we haven't designed it with any walls to drop off and have it be a sheer drop. You have to worry about someone walking into it. I don't see the need for the majority of the area, and that's the majority of the frontage of the basin. Surely, wouldn't object in adding some additional fencing near where the parking areas, the trailer parking area is, and where the employee parking areas are. I just don't see the need on going all the way around the full radius of that basin.
I have a problem with taking all those trees down.
For me, given that it's only a detention basin, I don't think we need a fence. It's only have water in it occasionally, and probably under conditions when the children from Napoti Place are less likely to be wandering over there.
I agree with Ted on that.
If I may continue, though, about the detention basin. I see no landscaping around it at all. I have to assume that you're planning a very, I think we could now say, old-fashioned detention basin with a low-flow channel and, lawn grass all the time. And nowadays, the move is to both have higher vegetation, maybe something you mow once a year rather than every 2 weeks, that will purify the water more if it runs, when there is water in it that eventually runs off. And I'd also suggest, at least on the back side of it, planting some trees like pin oak and willow oak, both for generally making it look better and because they will take up water out of the detention basin and transpire it, and really reduce the amount of time water sits in the detention basin. Since you got the parking lot right up against the detention basin in the front, I don't know that there's room to do anything there, but where the parking lot is not right up against the detention basin, I'd suggest more, at least more landscaping.
And the long-
Trees, shrubs.
And the long grasses discourage the geese.
Save you on mowing.
We can add some more plantings.
And the long grasses can be very decorative.
Okay.
Question on the front of the property along Clyde Road, which is where the public are going to be driving and seeing. What kind of decorative landscaping is going to go in there to help spruce up the front of this building?
Right now, we're providing more of a screen along that area. We're providing evergreen trees along that area at 6 to 7 feet in height. We're putting in a mix of spruce and white pine along that front to completely stretch from the entrance into the trailer parking area all the way along that frontage. So that was the intent. It was more of a screening, really nothing more than that from a decorative standpoint.
Well, that's along the parking area. What about in front of the warehouse itself?
In front of the warehouse itself, we weren't proposing to change. We're looking to leave everything the way it was. I know that Mr. Houck did make a mention of adding in a couple more islands at the end of the proposed parking area, which we would have no objection to doing.
Yes.
And in those areas, we can add some more decorative plantings.
That would
which we would
help
do
spruce it up a little.
along with the traffic signage that he's looking to have in those areas as well. No problem.
Then you agree to that?
Yes, we would agree to that.
So basically, this is just a trailer park, is that what you're saying?
Trailer parking area, yes.
How many trucks are going to be coming in and out, say, in a day, week?
I don't have the numbers because we don't have a formal end user for that. I mean, it could be, I don't want to speculate on how many it could be. I mean, you could have with 55 trailer parking spaces there. Could they turn over every truck with 15 bays and pull a truck in and out of there, a couple times a day? It's possible.
In this case, there's no concern about site buffer.
Mr. Scott?
That's a lot of traffic on, coming out of Clyde Road. You're going to Clyde Road, Bennett's Lane, which is one lane.
Well, they will for a while. Those questions? No, it's not as critical as saying overhead.
The question is, how many trucks are going to be coming out? There is a traffic.
Just to wrap up on my end, then we talked landscaping, soil erosion. We submitted to the Soil Conservation District. We have a couple minor comments for details to take care of. We submitted to the county. We received their approval. Essentially, it was a waiver since we don't front on a county road. I mentioned the DEP. We would need to submit for a general permit application for this plan for the filling of the wetlands. We would intend to do so. The There's no new utilities being brought in. Everything stays with the building. We're not touching any of that other than the new stormwater facilities to service the new parking lot. No new signage and no changes at this time to the building.
Also, Mr. LaCour, just for your information, we did submit a traffic impact analysis, which indicates that, and the reality is that the warehouse, the way is based on the size of the warehouse, your AM peak hour would be approximately 83 vehicles, and that is both employee vehicles who work there as well as trucks, and the PM peak hour was 60 vehicles. So trucks are going to be coming in most of the time, anytime during the day, but it's not going to be a significant peak hour increase, and a lot of that is there now. So it's just a matter of being able to handle the trucks when they get to the site and being able to park rather than to park along the easement or other places.
My concern is an increase of maybe 20, 30 trucks. If it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stretched out during the day, that's one thing. If there's 20 or 30 coming on Bennett's Lane and coming off of 27 and trying to make that turn around that corner and going over and hammering Easton Avenue, which is ridiculous now, and then also Amwell Road.
But
I understand what you're saying.
yeah, it's basically a warehouse. The parking is allowed, and obviously the trucks are going to get there. We did not do an analysis, to be honest with you, as to where we would think most of the truck traffic would come from. But my guess is that a greater portion of it would be the 287 corridor and Amwell Road and Cedar Grove Lane more than going back the other way. But
Because if it's just a trailer park, you're just not going to take a trailer and just park it there and let it stay there for a month.
no, and that's not the intent.
Okay.
No, that's not the intent. The intent is either the trailer's parked waiting to get to a bay to drop materials or waiting for a bay to open up to pick up materials and leave. So that,
All right, with 15 bays, you could have 30 trucks there a day.
well, you have 15 bays. We're not adding bays.
I know that, but
Yeah.
with 15 bays, you could have, and opening up a bigger spot, you could have potentially 30 trucks flying in and out a day or more.
And which you can have today. And all we're doing is basically putting the place for them to park so we can, again, accommodate them better when they come. Again, the building's not changing, the bays are not changing. It's just a matter of providing the place for those trucks to stay while they're waiting to either pick up or drop off.
Okay? Thank you.
Mr. Skapanis, you did review Mr. Healy's report,
I did.
and is there anything that we cannot comply with of Mr. Healy's requests, which are fairly minor in this application?
No.
Okay, so we will give him everything he needs. And I think all the other reports had no comments, so I have no further questions of this witness.
I have one question, though. Traffic would have to come in off of Hamilton Street. It could not come in off of Bennett's Lane, off 27. It can't come in from that direction because of the light bridge, right?
That,
All traffic flow would have to come in off of Hamilton.
if it is restricted, I'm unaware of whether it is or is not restricted.
There is a weight
Yeah, there's a
restriction.
way coming off the bridge.
I can also see an issue of them using Easton Avenue to Kennedy Boulevard. Is there any, and what does concern me too about the traffic, a lot of it may be there may already be there, but the purpose of this facility is obviously going to cause it to grow a lot more, and there's no controls on the growth, and we don't know where the traffic really is coming from. That is a concern.
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, from an overall perspective, and I understand what you're saying. I mean, you have to be concerned about the traffic, but, I mean, they're in conformance with everything, so where they have to do and what they have to do, really, we can't control. I mean, it's a good comment, because you're right, but we just don't have control over that. We zoned it for this use. They're in conformance with the ordinance.
Yeah, and to the
It's
degree,
beginning to look like there needs to be another planning board discussion about maybe this is not a zone for this use.
Yeah.
And we can't do anything about it tonight, but going forward, you know, we're bringing a trucking company, basically a trucking operation into the heart of our township. It has to use a lot of different streets and highways to get to its destination that are not commercial zones, that are not highway zones. I think there's something we need to look at in our planning then. And I said, can't do anything tonight, but I would hate to see a lot more of these facilities in this kind of a location.
Well, perhaps this M2 zone should not have been established here, but it was. It's occupied by commercial facilities, many of which will have trucks coming to them. Perhaps a specific warehouse like this will have more traffic than, let's say, L'Oreal, but, you know, it's there. We can't make it go away. Trucks could come in Veronica and then just cut across on Churchill and to Clyde is one way they would come. And the other way would be from 287 to Easton Avenue and then down Cedar Grove or Demont or JFK, all of which are residential. But long-haul trucks will be coming from 287 or from the Turnpike where they probably would come across via Veronica.
one of the things that Vince and I, frankly, just spoke about was looking at the uses that are permitted in the M2 zone, maybe revising them to specifically permit some of the uses that we're actively trying to encourage, such as data centers. Maybe as part of that process, we can look at uses like this, where right now they're technically permitted based on the way the uses are defined. Maybe there's a way that we can change some of the definitions and give some thoughts to the planning board for recommendations.
I do think we need to look at it in the future. As I understand, there's nothing, it's there, it exists, and it's going to be there, but the trucking traffic is detrimental to our local roads, not to mention all the other kinds of things. And again, this just happens to bring truck traffic through several directions, from several different directions, through parts, right in basically to the center of an area of our town, through everything. And I wish I would have thought about it 10 years ago, but I wasn't smart enough. But I don't know, I think we need to do something to see that this isn't happening again. I think trucks obviously have a place, but they need a place. They have a place in our society, and they perform a service. And I also tend to think they deserve a particular space within a town to operate in. That's not in the middle of it.
You done, Pete?
I'm done with my presentation.
We got to open to the public.
Okay. Entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I would move that this application be open to the public for a public hearing.
Seconded. Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward?
Seeing no one coming forward, I would move that this public hearing be closed.
Quick question for the applicant. You're asking for the variance for the existing condition of the 8.7-foot wide spaces. One of the suggestions I had in my report was either sign those for employee spaces or the ones that actually do comply, sign those for visitor spaces. Do you have an objection or a preference with regard to that recommendation?
We can sign those 8.7 spaces as employee spaces. I mean, quite frankly, these facilities generate very few visitors, so we'll just designate those as employee spaces.
We'll designate the visitor spaces.
I thought that might be actually
Yeah,
easier
okay.
for you.
Visitor spaces out front.
Okay.
Also, the taxes and water, I assume they're up to date?
I believe they are. If they aren't, they will be. Okay, if I may, very briefly. Again, there's been some discussion about whether, trees have to come down and whether, where the trucks go, but this is a permitted use in a zone. We are well within all of the zone requirements. It's a 2-acre zone with a 9-acre lot. We are far under the building coverage. We have a building that's only 25% of the building coverage, where we're allowed 50. We are under the impervious coverage. This application deals with all the necessary requirements for lighting, landscaping, stormwater management. In addition, we will be providing additional landscaping as requested this evening by Ms. McIver, and also additional landscaping as requested by Mr. Chase. And accordingly, I think that this applicant is entitled to the grant of the site plan approval. And I think still hanging out there is what you want to do with the fence around the detention basin. Thank you.
Anyone want to make a motion?
Madam Chairman, I would, but I think we first have to make a definitive yes or no on the fence around the...
Well, I think you can make a motion which
Okay.
way you
Which
want, and you
includes
get the
that.
discussion going.
Okay, in that case, I would move approval of the application, with all of the variances, with the exception of the one to eliminate the fence all the way around the detention basin, plus the landscaping changes that the applicant has agreed to.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
So now you can have discussion if you want to discuss the one fence issue.
I believe Mr. Metler just said that it didn't.
Well, I think Mr. Metler wants the fence, right? You want the fence.
I included it in.
Oh,
Yeah, he wants the
Yeah.
fence, so now you can discuss the board,
Yeah,
how the
and-
board's feeling, and then you can decide whether Mr. Metler would be willing to
yeah.
amend his motion if the board feels
If the
differently.
board so desires, I would amend my motion, but I need to know that.
Okay, can we poll the board for their,
Well, I was going to move to remove the requirement for the fence as an amendment.
Do you mean in its entirety or just in the back?
Well, I think the applicant has agreed to have a fence between the parking lot and the detention basin. It's just they didn't want to put it all the way around, and as I explained, I agree with them that I don't think a fence is needed all the way around, since this is a detention basin, not a pond.
Right.
And you can look at plenty of residential developments that have a detention basin with no fence around it at all.
Okay.
So you're willing to amend your motion in accordance with Councilman Chase's?
I'm willing to do that. I mean, it'd be really nice to have a vote, but
Is there
in the
anyone-
absence of any willingness to take a vote on the subject, I will nevertheless, at the request of Councilman Chase, amend my motion to eliminate the fence, save along the parking lot.
thank you.
And you're good with that second,
Yes, I
Bob?
happen to agree with
All right,
Dr.
then,
Chase.
then we'll vote and see how it comes out then.
Yeah.
Councilman Chase,
Yes, for the amendment.
Mr. LaCourte,
Yes.
Chairwoman McIver,
Yes.
Mr. Mettler,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Podzak.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now we need to vote on the motion.
No, that was the whole thing.
No, I thought that was the
No,
amendment.
No, he amended the whole motion, so it passed.
Well, I was not under that impression. Then can I change my vote?
You could change your vote.
I'm voting no.
All right.
Is there anyone else that would like to change their vote before we do the final count?
We're good. Motion passes then.
Thank you.
I have 5 minutes before we start the next one.
Yes, we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Don't say I'm not business friendly.
It is unfortunate. I had almost gone, because,
I understand the concern, but the long coverage.
that's what it's,
Frito-Lay
maybe
distribution
that's
center.
That's what I was
before we get another.
Yeah.
Look
at the truck.
Yeah, I know.
We should be confining these trucks to the closest parcel of land next to a major.
Which this is 427.
In reality, truck.
No, that was a different situation. That was a whole different thing.
Without, and be in an industrial zone the whole way. And even in North Brunswick.
What?
And reality too is that, yeah, this is gonna add some trucks, but that zone as a whole is pretty much built out. There's not,
Yeah.
you know, L'Oreal has room to expand.
Huh?
And I'm sure there's some other sites that might expand. It's not like,
Few years.
yeah,
And you guys go around the bend, maybe.
That's not,
yeah, there's some, but it's not like we're gonna be getting another 2 million square feet of,
Yeah, I know what you're saying, don't worry. That's what,
Catch basin. Dark road, they steal the inlets, the wells down. Make it quiet, more lights, more activity, less like that, outside, right?
I think what I'll do is try to contact Chris
that
Rutgers,
is a bad precedent.
the guy.
What?
Be nice if
Try to
Approval. There's nothing you can do.
It's permitted.
We should be looking to find trucking operations
guidelines
to the closest parcel to a major highway. So they come in a minimum of local streets.
so much
They
maintenance.
should be immediately off
I
287,
remember many
and we're not at all.
I agree with you, because it directly affects me. I don't know how many times
we
tractor
need is
trailers coming down DeMont
30
Lane
or
wake
more
me up.
I think tractor trailers should be eliminated from Cedar Grove,
They,
DeMont Lane.
they come down at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that noise wakes me up.
let it roll up.
So,
They're quickest route with the fewest turns, and
Rutgers came,
all right turns from 287 would be to go to Kennedy Boulevard. And when you start getting that amount of trucks on Kennedy Boulevard, you're gonna start hearing phone calls.
but, I know, but Kennedy Boulevard is the place that was designed originally.
I know that. That
Because
should
it has
have
the back, the
I don't know
spacing,
why they ever abandoned that.
because of Joan Fanouken. That was, she was the reason.
Because they're actually going to have.
That would have made so
You
much
remember
sense. Yeah, and they were also looking at a bridge across the river over where the Somerset Pine was. Would have been a natural,
And they have.
perfect. And the road was designed.
talking with Sergeant Eric Hagley
In the base,
about the possibility of putting weight limits on Demont Lane.
because they live perfectly happy even if it's standing coming out of a pond. I mean, there's other things
Because
that can't.
as with, similar with parts of Cedar Grove, your houses are fairly close to the street.
I know,
Yeah.
with Cedar Road, so it's a county road. Well, yeah, it is, but you know, the county allowed it to develop the way it did. Now, you
Yeah.
can't say, you know, oh, it's a county road now, let's, you know.
Well, Demont Lane is not a county road.
It should be easier to do it on the Lane.
Yes. And so far, I have been thwarted.
I'm amazed. I forget what it was before,
Particular, you need to be able to get to the track.
application for something in that area. They had a traffic count on Demont Lane. I was amazed at how high it is.
Do you know how long it takes me to make a left turn out of my driveway during rush hour?
I venture to say it's approaching being as busy as my street
Fills up.
in certain times of the day.
And this is well up.
That 1 year to get on the canal, remember?
Yes, in my case, it killed a lot of the
It was just nuts.
But they lose it.
All right, we're back on line.
Just give me 30 seconds to mark these exhibits so we can save time. I'll mark it in the back.
Oh, shit.
Greg, are you going to just use the one? I don't think you need anything else. Okay. We ready to go?
Yes.
Good evening, Madam Chairperson. Again, this is Peter Lanfrit appearing on behalf of this applicant. This is an application for the construction of a medical office building on Veronica Avenue in the M2 zone. This application involves a vacant piece of property, construction of a brand-new building with related parking. The plan meets all of your zoning requirements other than the number of parking spaces. The number of parking spaces, because we have no defined layout of the building, and you go by your one space per 150 square feet, would require 148 spaces. We are proposing 94 spaces. I have a traffic consultant this evening that will testify as to the reason why this board should grant the variance for those parking spaces. I intend to call this evening 4 witnesses who I hope will be very brief. First, the architect who will describe the building that is being proposed and the site engineer. Then a representative of the owner to describe the proposed use of the building, and then finally the traffic consultant to talk about the parking spaces. I will call as my first witness, Mr. Testa.
I want to raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Could you give us the benefits of your background?
Sure. Name again is Michael Testa. I'm the principal architect.
You got to put that real close.
Sorry about that. Again, my name is Michael Testa, principal architect of the architectural firm Michael V. Testa Architect, Manalapan, New Jersey. Licensed architect, 1996. A graduate, New Jersey Institute of Technology, 1990. Member National
License in New Jersey?
Licensed in New Jersey. Yes, sorry about
You're accepted.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Testa, and speak loudly into the microphone because this is being televised and recorded. You were retained by the applicant to design the building for the proposed medical use at this property on Veronica Avenue?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and can you indicate to the board, and I've marked as an Exhibit A1, which is your rendering of what the building will look like and the materials with which it will be constructed?
Okay, sure. I'm going to move the podium back a little bit. We have here a color rendering of the property as you enter the property. This elevation here facing Veronica Street, this facing the main drive aisle. This is our main entrance. The building is basically rectangular in shape. What we tried to do is try to break up the facade with different types of materials and different types of architectural forms, keeping it very uniform, very clean, but not making it very sterile. We wanted to make it a welcoming looking building. We've used materials such as brick veneer for durability along the base, took those accents up in a vertical manner. We've articulated the facade using different types of stucco finishes and kind of integrated a modern, postmodern feel with different types of elements, not very classical, but very contemporary in its nature. As you drive through, we have an extension of the building, a carport area, so we could drop off and receive people coming into the building and leaving the building in a drier environment to keep it more safe. The building also, the materials wrap all around all 4 sides, basically keeping the same character, not having a rear of the building, looks like a rear of the building. We have basically anodized aluminum frames, glass, insulated glazing for our windows, and a accented front entrance area as far as our storefront. Once we go into the building, I'm going to go into sheet PB1, which everyone should have as part of their package. And this is a basic overall view of what the first floor is going to, the shape of the first floor. The owner plans on occupying the first floor for their practice, medical practice, the entire first floor. We haven't really articulated the spaces in the layout. It's an extensive amount of work. Hopefully, with a favorable opinion from the board, we can proceed and do that. But the owner intends to occupy this entire first floor. We have 2 means of egress out of the first floor, a very elaborate, ornate entrance lobby we anticipate having, with the main entrance into the physician's offices, as well as a ambulatory type elevator that will take us up from the first and second floor. The building has no basement, it's a slab on grade, and we have perimeter glazing around the entire facade to allow for a lot of natural light into the building, which would, again, enjoy the view of the rest of the property. The second floor is essentially a copy of the first floor, except it's on the second floor. We don't have a tenant for the second floor at this time, but we anticipate a medical use on the second floor. And again, at that time, when we do have tenants, whether it's one tenant or multiple tenants, we'll articulate the interior spaces as needed.
Okay. On the exterior of the building, are you proposing any lighting?
Right now, we have some accent wall-mounted lights along the front facade, basically downlighting to illuminate the sidewalk for people for safety purposes in and out, and also to highlight the vertical elements of the building's facade. It's not really there to blast light into the parking lot. The site lighting, which the site engineer will speak more about, he'll better describe how the lighting is distributed across the site.
Okay, and under the portico or the entrance, will that area be lit also?
Yes, we anticipate a recessed type light fixture that would just be shining downward to illuminate the area under the canopy.
Where will all the mechanical equipment, the heating, air conditioning, and all of that be located?
Mechanical equipment will be located on the roof. Will be most likely in the center area of the roof to keep it far away from the edges. Right now, if you look at your building elevations, which would be sheet P3 and P4, we give you some height elevation elements on the side. We have parapets that are approximately 3.5 feet above the roof all the way around the building, and the larger parapet that goes up about 7 feet over the main entrance. So it's a substantial screening around the entire perimeter of the building. We anticipate draining the building inward into interior roof drains so that we have no openings, so that we really could get full view of a rooftop unit.
So all of the mechanicals that will be on the roof will not be visible to the passing motorist on Veronica Avenue?
No, they should not be.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions of this witness. Oh, just one, because Mr. Healy is going to probably ask it anyway. Your rendering, is that representative of the colors that you intend to use generally? In other words, you're going to use those colors?
Yeah, they're actual colors from Glengarry Brick as well as Synergy stucco systems. So it's a pretty accurate representation of colors that we've reviewed with the owner.
Okay, so you're not going to come back with a pink building and black stripes or
We
anything?
don't anticipate that.
Thank you. No further questions of this witness. Mr. Ullman?
Raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your name?
Gregory Oman, O-M-A-N.
Mr. Ullman, what is your occupation?
My occupation, I've been employed by Menlo Engineering now for a little over 15 years. Hold the position of Senior Project Manager at Menlo Engineering. Been a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey for a little over 12 years. I've testified in front of this board numerous times. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Ullman, you heard my opening remarks that at the present time there are no structures on the subject property.
That is correct.
Okay, can you describe basically what is on the property at this time, or the condition of the property as far as trees or other vegetation?
Sure. And I'm going to be talking about Exhibit A2, I believe that you marked it in. It's entitled Proposed Plan Exhibit. It's basically just a colorized version of the overall plan showing a back overlay of the landscaping that's being proposed, along with an aerial photo in the background showing the surrounding areas. The subject property is a 2-acre property identified by the township's tax map as Block 8802, Lot 78. Falls within the M2 zone, or the light manufacturing zone. It is a permitted use in this particular zone. Veronica Avenue is to the north. North is basically to the right side of the exhibit here. Veronica Avenue to the north, existing facility to the west, and open area to the east and south sides of the property. The site today is primarily all wooded with smaller caliper trees varying from 4 to 6 inches up to a maximum of approximately 10 inches throughout the entire 2 acres of the property. At the southern corner of the property is a small isolated pocket of wetlands that extends onto the eastern lot, again, just to the east of us. A letter of interpretation was provided by the DEP for an earlier application for, I believe, this particular property. That LOI is still valid based on the Permit Extension Act. Along the southern property, there is a 15-foot wide stormwater easement along exactly right off, 15 feet right off of that southern property line.
Okay.
Well, go ahead.
All right. What, can you indicate to the board what we are proposing to do with respect to the subject property?
Sure. What we're proposing is a 22,120 square foot, two-story medical office building, basically centrally located from front to rear of the property, approximately 10 and a half feet off of the western property line. Access to the site will be by a single driveway off of Veronica Avenue, located at the northeast corner of the property. Access is permitted throughout the parking field along the north side of the building, along with the south side of the building, with additional parking along the eastern property line. Based on the requirements for this particular zone for medical office, since there is no real breakdown of users at this time, we used a parking ratio requirement of 1 stall per 150 square feet. Therefore, for this square footage of building, 148 parking stalls are required. We're proposing 94 parking stalls, 9 feet in width by 18 feet in depth. Included in that are 10 ADA parking stalls, which have been strategically located along the northern wall and the eastern wall, closest to the main entrance. In terms of a grading and stormwater standpoint, the site basically drains from Veronica back to that southeast corner. A typical conventional stormwater drainage system is utilized within the parking field, allowing water to drain back to what we are proposing is a retention basin along the southern property line. This basin will serve as two purposes of the major three components for stormwater management. It'll handle and reduce rates of runoff from the site, and it will also provide the 80% TSS removal for water quality. The third piece of criteria for stormwater management is groundwater recharge. We are handling that in two different methodologies. We're utilizing an infiltration trench that the roof leaders from the building will percolate right into that infiltration and back into the ground. And we're also supplementing some porous pavement in the front area, the northern sections of the area, again, where we can have sheet flow across pavement that can percolate back into the ground. You meet that requirement based on the township and state standards. All remaining utilities, including water, sewer, gas, electric, and telephone, are available right in Veronica Avenue, or you're going to be able to extend it very easily right to the building.
Can you indicate to the board what we are doing with respect to both landscaping and lighting?
Sure. We looked at areas that we could maintain, again, because it was a wooded site, smaller trees, where we could keep wooded areas and maintain some of the existing vegetation along the north and southern boundaries. We made every attempt that we could for those areas. In terms of landscaping, we then supplemented those areas with some additional trees and shrubs, especially landscaping around the retention basin in the back, and obviously on all four sides of the building. All in all, for the site, we are proposing 79 trees, 108 shrubs, and 868 what I call ground cover, daylilies, fountain grasses, stuff of color that kind of help enhance the property. To the south side of the building, what I did not mention, we have the benefit of having the building shield both the loading zone directly adjacent to the building and also the dumpster location. Clearly, completely blocked out from the building, by the building, from the roadway.
Okay, with respect to the dumpster, before you go on to the lighting, there was a conflict in the plans as to whether it is going to be, the dumpster enclosure is going to be masonry or wood. Can you clarify that for the record, please?
Correct. The plan showed it as being just basically a concrete base with a board-on-board wood fence around it, where the detail showed it as a concrete enclosure. The applicant has decided to move forward with the concrete enclosure, colors that match the building. We find that they require less maintenance, less upkeep, look much nicer than a typical board-on-board that gets beat by the trucks and basically needs to be repaired within months of install.
Okay. Go on to the lighting, please.
Sure. We're supplementing the project with 400-watt metal halide fixtures mounted at 22.5 feet in height. We have approximately 8 fixtures throughout the parking field that's going to provide safe light levels for both vehicular and pedestrian access to and from the site. There's minimal spillage along the property lines. There was a comment in the engineer's review letter about mounting, doing anything possible to help reduce cutoff at the properties by putting some kind of house-side shield. We would definitely be willing to do that for those particular fixtures. We are also providing a single freestanding sign located just to the northwest side of the main entrance, 48 square feet with 10 feet height, 10 feet setback off of the property line.
Okay. And also, it's shown on the plans, and I guess instead of calling Mr. Testa back, there is also a building-mounted sign, is there not?
That is correct.
Okay, and that's located along Veronica Avenue?
Correct.
Okay.
In terms of approvals, we require approvals from Delaware Raritan Canal Commission, Somerset Union, Soil Conservation, Somerset County Planning Board, and all remaining township approvals, including fire, police, et cetera.
And all those agencies have plans pending before them and are being reviewed at the present time, is that correct?
That is correct. The one that we actually do have an approval from is from the Somerset County Planning Board.
Correct.
They have no jurisdiction.
Have you had an opportunity to review the staff reports in conjunction with this application?
Yes, I have.
Okay, which one do you have first? I'll let you.
The engineer's report.
Okay, and Mr. Houck's report was dated October 8, 2013,
Correct.
and it consists of, I believe it's 6 pages, plus some drawings. Are there any comments in that report that we cannot comply with?
We can comply with all the comments within the report. I did try to reach out to Mr. Houck today. Unfortunately, I was not able to connect with him. There were 4 comments regarding the stormwater design and some maintenance requirements that I kind of wanted to discuss with Carl, that we could definitely work out. If we can't come to an agreement, obviously we would be required to come back to the board, but I feel that they're minor items that we can definitely work out with Carl.
So at least at this time, you feel you can comply with all of the comments contained therein, subject to discussion with Carl?
Correct.
Okay. And the only other individual who issued a report, I believe, that had comments was Mr. Healy's report, which, at least from your perspective, required a correction of the lot data table. He also has a landscape comment on page 2, number 4. Would you like to address that comment?
Yeah, basically where we showed existing wooded areas to remain along the northern and southern property lines, we do have, there are a couple of trees, proposed trees being located, shown in those areas, mostly just to supplement the existing trees that exist today. Obviously, those can be adjusted in the field, and we could work with the board's professionals during construction on where they would basically be best placed within the existing footprint of the trees that exist today.
Okay, and also all those trees will be within our property line and not within any of the right-of-ways of the municipality, correct?
Correct. The 4 street trees that we currently show within the right-of-way of Veronica Avenue will be shifted onto the site.
Okay. I have no further questions of this witness.
Want to raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Your name, please?
Hesing Demesman.
Can you spell that for the record, please?
HYESUNGDEMESMIN.
You can be seated. Ms. Demesman, you are employed by whom?
University Pain Medicine Center.
Okay, and that is the tenant that will be occupying the first floor of the subject property?
Correct.
Okay, and who is the owner of that company?
Dr. Didier Demesman,
Who's your husband?
who is my husband.
And he's making you testify this evening, and he's not here.
Right.
Okay, just want to get that on the record. Okay, and you're employed by the company and are familiar with the company's operations?
Yes.
Okay, and the applicant is a different entity, but that is also your husband's company?
Absolutely correct.
So your husband is going to be owning the property, and then the medical practice will be leasing the first floor of the property, correct?
Yes.
And the second floor, at the present time, what is the intention?
The intention is we are going to lease it out to tenants.
Okay, and you have no medical user at the present time?
At present time, no.
But it's your intent to try to attract a medical user to the property?
Yes.
Now, your husband's company, how many facilities do you currently own?
We currently own 3 facilities,
Okay, and how many facilities do you work out of?
4 facilities.
Okay, where are your current facilities?
Clyde Road in Somerset, Wordsfield Drive in Somerset, Monroe, and South Plainfield.
Okay, and Monroe you own
Yes.
And
Worth Fair Drive
you own?
and Clyde Road.
Okay. And is this facility that you're proposing to construct going to be an additional facility, or is it going to replace one of your facilities?
It's going to be replacing Clyde Road, Somerset office.
Okay. And how big is your Clyde Road facility?
Approximately 3,300 square
Okay.
foot.
Okay, and this is approximately 11,000 square feet, so it'll be a larger facility?
Yes.
And ultimately, you will then leave the Clyde Road facility, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What kind of medical practice does your husband have?
He's an interventional pain specialist.
Okay. What does that mean?
Our clinicians treat patients with pain. It could be cancer pain. Patients suffer from back pain, leg pain, so we treat patients with pain interventionally with
Okay.
minimally invasive procedures.
Okay. Now, at the present time, how many physicians are employed by the company?
Present time, 3 physicians.
Okay. With this new facility, how many physicians will be employed by the company?
4 physicians.
So you will be,
Plan.
you will be adding one more physician.
Yes,
Now, the 4 physicians that are employed by the company don't all work at this facility, is that correct?
not at the same time, correct.
So they rotate between the facilities?
Absolutely.
And the game plan is that at any given time, how many physicians would be at this facility?
Maximum 2 physicians.
Okay. Do you also have additional mid-level clinicians, as they're known?
Yes.
And what are mid-level clinicians, if you can?
They are nurse practitioners or physician assistants.
Okay. And how many of them do you currently have at Clyde Road?
We currently have 2 mid-level practitioners.
Okay, and at the new facility, you would propose to have how many?
We plan to have 4.
Okay. Now, we have no floor plans. You haven't designed all of the nuances for the interior space of the building, is that correct?
That's correct.
But your game plan is to have how many examining rooms and treatment rooms within the facility?
10 exam rooms.
Okay.
That is the plan.
Okay. And based on your current operation and projecting to the larger facility, how many patients would you envision seeing at the subject property at any given time?
At any maximum given time, I would say approximately 15 patients.
Okay. And you will have 2 physicians there on a regular basis primarily, and then 2
Mid-level practitioners,
practitioners?
yes.
Okay. How many other employees would be at the facility?
Approximately 10 to 11
Okay.
at the same time.
And what kind of employees would they be?
There would be front desk receptionists, there would be medical assistants, there will be x-ray technicians.
Okay. So the total maximum is approximately between 30 and 35 employees and patients that would be at that facility at any given time?
Correct.
Okay. What are your hours of operation?
Our hours of operations are 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and a couple of weeks, depending on the schedules, up until 8 p.m.
During the
During 2 days a week.
2 weeknights till 8
2
p.m.?
weeknights till, yes.
Okay.
Maximum 8 p.m.
And are you open Saturday or Sunday?
No, we are not.
Okay.
Can I just clarify real quick? All of the numbers, that was for the first floor,
Right.
okay? Because.
That is a maximum
Yeah.
we are envisioning,
But then
yes.
you're proposing a 2-story building.
Right.
Okay. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the numbers later with respect to the variance, but I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, we can give you numbers based on other methodologies for the second floor to justify the parking, but the first floor we have
You'll get into that later?
with my traffic consultant.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Now,
So, are any of the physicians dispensing physicians? Will they be dispensing pain medications?
Dispensing as distributing medications to patients?
Yes.
We
For
do not.
instance, narcotics.
Oh, yeah, narcotics are not dispensed by our facilities. Patients are given prescriptions,
Yes.
and they go to pharmacies.
Very good.
You said approximately 15 patients, but I would think you'd be likely to have up to 15 more patients waiting while the doctors are seeing the 15 patients.
At the same time, 15 patients waiting? I highly doubt that. No, I don't think so. at the same time, 15 patients?
We only have 10 exam rooms, so we can only be seeing 10. so-
Yeah, well, I
yeah,
was just thinking,
yeah.
you said 15 patients.
That's allowing for some waiting to be seen.
Okay, so that includes the waiting.
That is correct.
That would be bad scheduling.
Angry patients.
Very angry.
No other questions? I will call Mr. Troutman.
Raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Your name and your experience?
Yes, my name is Jay Troutman, Troutman. I'm a principal with the traffic engineering firm of McDonough and Ray Associates. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New
You're
Jersey.
accepted.
Thank you.
Mr. Troutman, you were retained by the applicant to do a traffic analysis or an impact analysis with respect to the subject application, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and what was the scope of your study?
we did a fully detailed traffic study. It was submitted to the board, reviewed by your professionals. It consisted of site visit to review existing traffic and roadway conditions, counts of existing volume along Veronica Avenue, parking observations at 5 other medical office buildings along Veronica Avenue, future traffic volume projections, level of service, roadway capacity analysis, and review of the site plan and parking.
Okay, give us, first of all, the Reader's Digest version, so to speak, of the projected volumes that are going to be generated by this proposed use and their impact or lack of impact on Veronica Avenue.
Based on Institute of Transportation Engineers projections for a 22,000 square foot medical office building, we would anticipate a total of 51 trips in and out during the morning peak hour, 41 in and 10 out, and then 77 trips during the weekday PM peak hour with 21 in and 56 out.
And to make Mr. LaCourt happy, none of those trips should be tractor trailers, you don't think?
That's correct. It'd
Okay.
be passenger cars.
You're never going to make Mr. LaCourt happy.
Okay. And the impact of those trips on Veronica Avenue?
We did a capacity analysis, found that there's adequate capacity to process the additional turning movements in and out of the access at Veronica Avenue. I believe if you look at the level of service that would be anticipated, it would be level of service C on a grade of A to F.
Okay. The other part of your analysis dealt with the parking for the subject property, is that correct?
Yes, the main focus of the analysis relates to the parking variance that's being requested, and we looked at this several different ways to see what kind of answers ITE would have for something like this, what kind of experience is occurring along Veronica Avenue based on actual counts, and then also just doing a quick math analysis of this applicant's use, at least of the first floor, and how many bodies are in the building and what kind of parking that would be. So if I could just briefly take you through some of those numbers. First of all, the supply that we're providing for the site, the total parking supply is 94 spaces. And when you talk about parking ratios, the ratio would be 4.25 spaces per 1,000 square feet provided for the entire site. Comparing that to average peak parking demand projected by ITE for medical buildings, they project average peak demand of 3.53 spaces per 1,000. So we exceed the ITE benchmark. Next, looking at local demand, we looked at 5 locations along Veronica, 49 Veronica Avenue, 51 Veronica Avenue, 75 Veronica Avenue, 77/79 Veronica Avenue, and 81 Veronica Avenue. Those are all the addresses of the 5 sites we looked at, and they're tabulated on page 5 of my report. The most similar site in terms of size for this building is number 49 Veronica Avenue. It's about a 22,000 square foot building. It actually has 94 existing parking spots. And their peak demand through several days of counts during peak periods was 59 spaces of demand. So the ratio there was 2.3. I would note that the sign for the tenants in the building is full at that site, but I did note also that there was some space available in the building, so that might explain why they're down at 2.3, but certainly they're well under ITE and well under what we have. Another one that I would consider probably the most intense generator out there would be number 75 Veronica, because they have a walk-in urgent care facility, and it's a much larger building, but just getting down to ratios, their peak demand in terms of a ratio was 3.56 spaces of demand per 1,000 square feet. Again, ITE was 3.53, so right in line with ITE's peak demand. All of the other ratios at all 5 sites were lower. That was the highest one we found, 3.56 per 1,000. Just another kind of way to look at it based on the testimony we just heard. If you take half of the spaces and allocate them to the first floor, we would have 47 spaces available to the first floor. And just going through the numbers we just heard, you'd have 2 doctors on site, 2 mid-level clinicians, that would be 4, 15 patients, that would be 19, and then 11 other employees. So that would be about 30 spaces of demand you could find just from those numbers, and we have 47 available. It gives you a comfort level, again, just like the ratios, that we have extra parking, in case that perfect storm were to occur and people showed up before people left. So that's just another sort of comfort level you get when you break down the numbers. I would note that the ordinance requirement of 1 per 150 square feet, if you convert that to a ratio, that's 6.67 spaces per 1,000. So that number's way out of line in terms of a ratio with all these other numbers that we looked at. I think it serves a purpose, because sometimes you can have a very small building, with 2,000 square feet. Using that ratio for a very small building, you come up with needing 13 or 14 spots. That's reasonable. You need to protect and have a requirement for those smaller buildings that works. But as the buildings get larger, you have a law of diminishing returns, and that type of ratio does not hold on a larger building in terms of actual demand. There is another formula in the ordinance which we could not use because we didn't have the exact breakout of the rooms, but just using based on the testimony we heard, it prescribes 4 spaces per doctor. So if we assume that the 2 doctors and the 2 mid-level clinicians are doctors, so 4 times 4, you'd have 16 for that, and then you also need 1 per employee. So you have say you have 15 employees, the 4 doctors plus the other 11 employees. That's another 15. That gets you to a number of 31 using your ordinance. And again, it accounts for really all the bodies in the building with some generous buffer. So I think for all of those reasons, I think we have a very reasonable, almost excessive supply of parking to give a level of comfort in granting this variance.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
there any questions from the board at this time?
All of the buildings that you gave us, those are all medical buildings, I assume?
Yes.
I was just curious then, is how your calculations and your tables take into account one of those buildings that includes LabQuest? I'm not
Yeah.
sure of the numbers.
Yeah, LabCorp is in the number 7779 complex. They have, I think, the physical therapy building in the front, and then LabCorp is in
Right.
there.
The reason I bring that up is, again, personal experience. I stopped going there because when I got there numerous times, there were 50 or 60 people in the waiting room sitting on the floor outside. Now, if that becomes a tenant in this new building, how does this compute in the parking? Because I would go in that parking lot and drive around for 10 minutes to find a parking place. Now, in this situation, if your client doesn't have enough parking, I'm not sure where the harm is other than to your client, because there's no place to park on the street. I doubt they're going to be parking in another building parking lot, but I do have real reservations about the parking.
Yes.
How do you account for a tenant like a LabQuest?
Well, typically, those tenants would, in our experience, just based on the counts, we counted that site where the LabCorp is. We didn't observe that situation during any of the counts we took. I've seen those, I guess depending on when they hold their hours. My experience is they sometimes hold them very early in the morning.
7 to 3.
Yeah, and their peak, it tends to be that early morning before the rest of the building builds up. I don't believe the intent of this applicant would be to have that type of facility here anyway, but it is factored into the study we found. It's in the IT data in terms of an overall ratio, and with the building being this large, you have a certain mass of parking that's available to handle, a larger demand situation, even though it doesn't appear to be so, at least with the first floor tenant.
All right, does your client have a plan should additional parking be necessary?
The answer is, and I think where you can take your comfort in this is, my client is going to be occupying that as their primary offices, and they're going to ensure, number one, that there's adequate parking, and that they're not going to be leasing the rest of the space to a medical use that would be a high-traffic generator that would impact upon their use. No, we don't have a plan to go elsewhere, but we're going to make sure that whoever's going to occupy upstairs is not going to gobble up our parking spaces so that my client's patients don't have parking.
Well, again, I may be wrong, but I think that the real harm would be to your client, not to the general
Right.
public.
It would be, and like I said, if this was strictly a spec building and my client was building the building and had no intention of occupying it, maybe they would be less concerned about, whether people find a place to park. But here, their primary offices are here, they're treating their patients here, and their primary goal is to make sure that their patients are well cared for, so that if there's a prospective tenant upstairs that is a potential high traffic generator, they probably are not going to lease that space to them at that point in time because it doesn't benefit them. And also, the upstairs space can also be broken down, and you may have a various mix. You may have some very low-intense users, such as psychologists or psychiatrists or other types of uses that don't generate a lot of traffic, so you can balance it out.
Are there any other questions?
I'm trying to, I just wanted to observe to Mr. Oman that the executive director of the Canal Commission has a lot of comments on the drainage, and I'd hope that you deal with all of those when you submit revised plans, particularly about the efficacy of the infiltration trench. That said, I praise you for both the landscaping and the use of pervious pavement. I've been trying to get pervious pavement used practically since I came on the planning board, and this is the first or second one that I can remember that has actually used it. I could wish that you had even more of it.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I would at this time move that we open the meeting to the public on this application.
Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward at this time?
Madam Chairman, seeing no one coming forward, I would move that the public hearing on this application be closed.
Aye.
All right,
I'll second.
okay. A motion on, if there's no other discussion, would someone like to?
I would move approval of the application with any conditions that might have been agreed to.
I'll second it.
Councilman Chase,
Yes.
Mr. LaCourte,
Yes.
Chairwoman MacGyver.
Yes, and I'm very happy about the pervious parking also.
Mr. Mettler,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes, I think you have an excellent application. Good luck with it.
Mr. Potnasak.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You didn't even get to give a summary, Pete. I like that. I like that.
You ready? Okay. Well, I guess now we're in work session. What's being presented to you is a draft new open space and recreation plan. Hopefully, at some point in the future, we'll have a public hearing to officially adopt it as an element of the master plan. It was developed over the summer with input of the Township's Open Space Advisory Committee. In fact, they initiated a small steering committee that I worked with to develop the plan. And then there was a series of meetings and a series of drafts that were developed over the summer, which resulted in this draft that's submitted to you. The text and the tables were provided to you in your packet and previously through an email. The various maps, I think there's a total of about 30 maps, are up on the website. Those weren't provided since there's so many of them and they're large. They couldn't be emailed because there's about 60 megabytes of data associated with those, but they are on the website under the planning zoning webpage. I'll just very quickly, considering the hour, and also I'll do a more detailed presentation at the official hearing. I'll just go over the document real quick. Chapter 1, it describes the establishment of the Open Space Trust Fund and the Open Space Advisory Committee. It provides a summary of the year 2000 Open Space and Recreation Plan. It describes there's a detailed summary of accomplishments since 2000, including all of the open space and farmland preservation goals and objectives and initiatives that have been met. It describes, there's a summary of the efforts, including the amount of township-owned open space, county-owned open space, basically resulting in a total of 9,400 acres, or 34% of the township's land area is now preserved, and then describes a number of additional accomplishments, including the ongoing maintenance of the grassland preserves, establishment and maintenance of trails, et cetera. It also mentions a number of the awards that the township has received as a result. It also describes the needs assessment That was done last year in 2012. And then it describes the need for this new open space and recreation plan. Basically, it updates the 2001. That was obviously established and done when the Open Space Trust Fund was just done and the Open Space Advisory Committee was being established. Obviously, a lot has happened since then. We're in a different place in terms of our inventory and also how we're going to be moving forward. It coordinates the 2000 Open Space Plan and the needs assessment, basically melds them together, and it also meets the requirements for the green acres in terms of the requirements for an open space plan, which is important for future funding. It describes the public participation that was involved already in terms of the open meetings, the open space, this meeting, and obviously the official public hearing that will occur in the future. There's a section on goals and objectives. There are general goals, and then there's a series of program-specific goals, goals for land preservation and acquisition, goals for resource protection, agricultural preservation, recreation, cultural resources, and public education and involvement. There wasn't too much in preparing this. There's nothing, there isn't too much unique here or newly created. Basically, it's an amalgam of the different plans, the farmland plan, the open space plan, the needs assessment, and kind of consolidated all into one concise, comprehensive list of goals and objectives. The inventory is pretty much self-explanatory. It's the factual basis of the plan. It has inventories, tables, and text descriptions of existing parks and open space. There's agricultural resources, so it has preserved farmlands, farmland soils, etc. There's a rather extensive inventory of natural resources, which was basically taken from the environmental resource inventory that was recently done within the last 4 or 5 years. That was commissioned by the Township Environmental Commission, and obviously a number of maps and text descriptions that describing a number of the environmental features that may inform future open space preservation decisions. There's an inventory of historic and scenic resources, again, a series of maps, national and state designations of our historic districts, the National Scenic Byway, et cetera, and as well our locally or municipally designated historic resources and our scenic roadways. Chapter 4 is the needs analysis, and this is essentially a summary of the key points of the recreation needs assessment that was done last year. And then there was also a summary of the needs analysis results. Again, this was taken from the needs assessment with the main points kind of gleaned from that and put into this document. And then the meat of the document is Chapter 5, which is the action plan. It basically consists of 2 components, and this is where the 2 kind of documents kind of come together. There's a preservation action plan component, and then a recreation recommendations and action plan component. The preservation action plan covers a number of different issues. One is land preservation areas, and this was mostly taken from and kind of carried forward from the 2000 open space plan. It basically outlines a number of general areas of the township where preservation should continue to be considered. And there's a series of maps that went along with it, maps 5.1 through 5.6, Canal Preservation Millstone Valley area, Kingston Griggstown Preserve, Village Green Belts, which basically recommends around our historic hamlets that we try to preserve the areas around those hamlets, Stream Greenways, 10-mile run greenway. Both of these obviously are trying to preserve areas around sensitive streams. Greenways connectivity, basically the theme there being connecting existing open space as a goal. And then the scenic corridor planning area, basically we do have a number of scenic corridors, so recommending that we try to concentrate our open space efforts along our scenic corridors. It describes tools to achieve open space, land acquisition, conservation easements and land trusts, and partnerships with nonprofit organizations. Those were carried forward from the 2000 plan. The next section, implementation of the farmland preservation plan. That's an important tool to achieve open space goals. Basically, under farmland preservation, the land is not bought outright, but the development rights are purchased from the landowner, and an easement is placed over the land, preventing future development. And the farmland plan has a total of 19 targeted farms consisting of 830 acres. So that's an important element of our overall open space effort, so it's incorporated into this plan. Implementation of the Pathways and Trails Plan, same thing, has a number of key recommendations. This plan summarizes those and basically endorses them as a part of our overall open space plan. And also as part of our recreation plan as well, obviously, for trails. I think this plan also, I think, has some recommendations that are somewhat unique to an open space plan. I think more should have these type recommendations. Zoning and infrastructure considerations. It identifies the rural zones of the township, the A zone, the canal preservation, the rural residential RR3 and RR5 zones. Basically indicates that these are these zoning designations which cover a rather significant portion of our township, contribute to the maintenance of the rural character in those areas, and the township should actively seek to preserve those rural designations. It identifies cluster provisions, which are, we do have a number of different cluster provisions where developers are allowed to, are encouraged to develop a portion of the property with the remainder being preserved. Lot size averaging, the NRPC cluster option, and agricultural cluster option. It encourages the continued use of those provisions, and also recommends that the township investigate those provisions and see if we can further encourage people to use those if we do have future subdivision, maybe allowing some greater flexibility in the lot sizes and other standards. Infrastructure considerations, it mentions how critical the sewer service area is in dictating where future development occurs, and recommends that the township very carefully restrict future sewer expansion. Land stewardship, this was a specific recommendation that the Open Space Advisory Committee wanted added, and this goes to the fact that the township has spent a large part of the last 10 years acquiring open space. We have now a very large inventory, so there has to be more of a acknowledgement of land stewardship. And there's a recommendation that the township consider development of a land stewardship plan or policy, and basically coming up with land management objectives for each preserved site. Certain lands might be more for grassland preserves, certain are more for streamland preservation. What are we doing with these different properties moving forward? Historic preservation is part of this plan as well. It discusses previous efforts, and then mentions a number of ongoing and future efforts, the maintenance and future use of the 21 township-owned buildings, preservation of Franklin Inn, Kingston School, Stutthof Gunther House, all of which are kind of ongoing things that the township is trying to figure out exactly what we're going to do with these properties and the best way to preserve them. It recommends that the township seek certified local government status, which could help the township, has greater control over what can occur in historic districts, and also opens the township up possibly to more grant funding. Our continued partnership with the Meadows Foundation obviously is an important part of our plan moving forward. It mentions the development of a township inventory or mapping of historic sites, which is an ongoing process. The Historic Commission is currently working on that. Recreation recommendations and action plan. There's not really too much original here. It's basically, again, taken from the 2012 needs assessment, which went through an exhaustive process. Existing park improvements, new park improvements, nature areas and nature education, outdoor athletic fields, programming. These are basically the issues that are discussed and specific recommendations under each of those categories. outdoor aquatics, partnerships, et cetera. So that's basically the plan. It's on our website again, under the Planning and Zoning webpage with all of the tables and maps that go with it. I have received a number of comments from Councilman Chase. Basically, the bottom line is, with regard to each of his suggested changes, bottom line is I'll make all of these different corrections that he's suggested. I'll try to bring up some that might be Ted, was there any of your comments you feel that, in particular, the board should discuss?
I brought along a copy. I'll just mention to the board that the most substantive suggestions were, one, that in the text it be explained that farmland preservation equals purchase of development rights, leaving fee simple ownership to an owner who continues farming on the land, and that's maybe obvious to the board members, but not necessarily to the public, and that it should be mentioned in the text that since 2001, the township has used open space funds to retain an open space and land management consultant who has managed both acquisition of properties and development rights and the maintenance of properties. And then I mentioned one more award that we'd won, which Mark wasn't aware of because I never brought it into the municipal building. And I think other things I had were basically wording things. I also, this afternoon, I went over the maps and sent Mark comments on the maps. Again, I don't think there was anything. I think the most substantive thing was that at one point the Griggstown golf course was shown as township owned, which it isn't.
Yeah, we'll have to go over that. I wasn't sure about which map you were referring to, but maybe on the side we can go over that.
Well, I don't have that in front of me, but you can figure out.
Yeah, there are a number of comments.
The second map.
Yeah, the plan would be right now, would be to hold the public hearing on December 4th, which is most likely the next planning board meeting. We have a couple applicants, so that would probably be the night that we would do this. The board doesn't have to take any action this evening on this. They'll take the action at the formal hearing to adopt the element of the master plan. The purpose was to give this to see if there were any additional input, as Ted had, so that when we have the hearing, that it's in its final form, so it can be adopted that evening.
Do any of the other members have any comments for this evening?
Other than this is it's very impressive.
Yes.
We don't talk about truck parking. What's wrong with this? Bob's going to speak. Go ahead.
That's coming.
Well, there isn't any trucking in here. Mark, I want to thank you for your staff, and all the committees who put this together. You've done a really fabulous job in putting this all together, and I commend you and I thank you.
Thank you. So why don't we say if you have any comments, send me an email within the next week or so, and then I'll incorporate the changes that Councilman Chase had indicated, both with regard to the text and the map. That'll be the subject of the public hearing on December 4th. All right, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion?
Second.